The grand chandeliers sparkled across the marbled floor of the Highclere estate, illuminating the most talked-about wedding of the year. Maxwell Harrington, heir to the Harrington financial fortune, stood at the altar in an impeccably tailored suit that cost more than some people's cars. Across from him stood Clarissa Townsend, radiant in a custom-made gown that was rumored to be worth $500,000. Everyone in attendance held their breath as a hush fell over the crowd. This was the moment they had waited for. Then, an audible gasp. Maxwell fumbled the ring. As it clattered to the floor, he turned around only to see his pregnant wife in tears. Maxwell Harrington wasn't always a millionaire with a polished exterior. Born in a modest neighborhood in Chicago, he learned early on that grit and ambition could be his ticket out of poverty. He studied relentlessly, eventually earning a scholarship to Yale. There he befriended the likes of Andrew Carmichael, the son of a shipping magnate who introduced Maxwell to the upper echelons of society. During his postgraduate years, Maxwell's knack for hedge fund investments exploded his personal wealth. By the time he turned 29, he had made his first million, and Harrington Financial was on the rise. But behind every success story lurked personal struggles. Despite his wealth and supposed charm, Maxwell always felt he had to prove himself to the old money circles that sneered at him from behind crystal wine glasses. 6 months ago, after finalizing a particularly successful deal in Manhattan, Maxwell met Clarissa Townsend at a fundraiser gala at the Waldorf Astoria. Clarissa's father, Sterling Townsend, was legendary in real estate circles for building entire city blocks in record time, eager to align their families and fortune. Sterling introduced Clarissa to Maxwell, and a whirlwind courtship began. Little did Clarissa know Maxwell harbored secrets and people he left behind, including a woman named Georgina Coleman. Georgina Coleman's name had long vanished from Maxwell's official story, but those who truly knew him, like his best friend Andrew, knew that Georgina was no mere fling. She had been Maxwell's first true love back at Yale. Their chemistry was explosive, their fights and reconciliations fueled by their shared hunger for success and the desire to leave their past behind. When Georgina discovered she was pregnant, Maxwell's life took a sudden turn. He was close to securing a major investment opportunity, overshadowed by a wealthy competitor who tried to smear his name. Feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, Maxwell didn't handle the pregnancy news with grace. He and Georgina fought. Horrible words were exchanged, hurt and betrayed. Georgina left for London, where her sister lived. Maxwell told himself he wasn't ready for fatherhood, especially with all that business pressure. He reasoned that Georgina deserved better than his half-hearted commitment and the anxieties he carried. But that wasn't all. Rather than step up, Maxwell made an arrangement with Georgina's mother to provide financial support. Yet the emotional connection remained severed. He buried all thoughts of Georgina until Clarissa Townsend waltzed into his life and made him believe he could craft a perfect, polished new beginning. The engagement of Clarissa Townsend and Maxwell Harrington became a media sensation. Reputable outlets, such as Bloomberg, the New York Times, and even Vogue, covered their story. She was the privileged daughter of a real estate mogul, and he was the self-made millionaire. They embodied everything high society loved, a rags-to-riches story fused with inherited wealth, ensuring mutual benefit in business and social prestige. Their engagement party at the Townsend family's Southampton estate was an extravaganza filled with celebrities, CEOs, and notable figures like Beatrice Carmichael, the prominent wedding planner who boasted clients like Hollywood actors and European royalty. The toasts were lavish. The wine was imported from a 200-year-old French vineyard, and the party ended with fireworks over the Atlantic Ocean. Outwardly, Maxwell seemed like he was on top of the world, smiling for cameras alongside Clarissa, cherishing every spotlight. Yet, hidden beneath the tailored suits and refined manners, he was plagued by guilt. Images of Georgina's tear-streaked face flashed in his mind. He tried to brush them away, focusing on the future that lay ahead. A future that would be unstoppable if he could just maintain the perfect facade. But fate has a way of unraveling even the best-laid plans. One crisp morning, Maxwell's doorman at his Park Avenue penthouse announced a surprising visitor, Georgina Coleman. Her face was pale, her eyes bruised by fatigue, yet her presence radiated a calm intensity. Maxwell's heart thundered in his chest. He had received fleeting updates that Georgina relocated from London back to the States, but never once expected her to stand at his doorstep. He ushered her inside, offering her a seat on a velvet sofa and a glass of water. Georgina explained that she had tried to rebuild her life working as an events coordinator in London and later in Los Angeles. She kept the pregnancy hidden from almost everyone in her circle besides her own mother. Now she was back to settle things. As she lifted her shirt slightly, Maxwell's eyes confirmed what he had only suspected, but never truly faced. She was pregnant with his child. The room spun. Emotions collided, fear, excitement, regret, and a strange sense of relief. Georgina asked the question. Maxwell dreaded. What happens now? He had no immediate answer. Silence hung in the opulent living room, like a thundercloud poised to unleash a storm, heralding the chaos about to befall all their lives. Maxwell's immediate reaction was to protect Clarissa and the engagement from scandal. After all, their families were set to merge fortunes. Business deals hinged on the public's perception of their union. Even a whiff of impropriety could send investors and society tongues wagging. But he couldn't just ignore Georgina's predicament. Not anymore. She was carrying his child. He proposed financial arrangements, but Georgina refused to be relegated to a secret once again. Her determination cut him like a knife. "I can't believe you think money fixes everything," she snapped, her voice shaking. "This isn't about blackmail. It's about doing what's right for our child." Maxwell felt cornered. Did he break off the engagement with Clarissa, risking his entire standing in high society, and possibly losing the strategic alliance with the Townsend family? Or did he keep Georgina hidden, continuing to lie and hoping it would all magically resolve? Neither path seemed survivable. Yet time offered no mercy. Georgina's belly was growing by the day. Fate took a darker turn when Clarissa's father, Sterling Townsend, unwittingly pressured Maxwell about a prenuptial agreement that would seal their finances together. The walls were closing in, and Maxwell found himself on a collision course with disaster. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Maxwell juggled his carefully managed life like a high-wire circus act. He'd spend mornings finalizing last-minute business deals with Harrington Financial's board, ensuring the synergy with Townsend Realty soared after the wedding. Afternoons were swallowed by wedding preparations with Clarissa outfit fittings, guest lists, menu tastings. Evenings, however, brought secret visits to Georgina's modest apartment in Chelsea, where he tried to offer whatever emotional support he could muster, and medical bills for her prenatal checkups. Clarissa, always attuned to Maxwell's moods, sensed an odd distance in him. She chalked it up to wedding stress, but her suspicions were stoked by the occasional phone call that Maxwell refused to answer in her presence. She had once caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar number, Georgina's, and felt a sting of jealousy. But Clarissa was more concerned with appearing perfect to her parents than prying into Maxwell's affairs. Sterling Townsend's approval had always been her driving force, and she was taught to never question a man whose net worth soared in the millions. Little did Clarissa know each passing day brought Maxwell closer to the precipice. The foundation of their love was built on illusions and half-truths, on borrowed time that threatened to shatter. Clarissa's bridesmaid and lifelong friend, Samantha Diaz, had a keen eye for details. Working as a journalist at a local New York station had sharpened her instincts. Samantha noticed Maxwell's absent stares and the slight tremor in his hand when he picked up certain calls. During a wedding rehearsal at St. James Cathedral, she caught Maxwell sneaking out to take a phone call. She overheard fragments of a heated conversation, mentions of doctor's appointments, still waiting. "And tell me what you need." Samantha's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. She decided to investigate discreetly. After all, she owed it to her friend Clarissa to ensure the marriage was on solid ground. She took the number she had spotted on Maxwell's phone during a previous incident and did a reverse lookup, discovering it belonged to Georgina Coleman. A few deeper database searches uncovered an interesting trail. Georgina had once been Maxwell's girlfriend, rumored to have left for London, and returned recently under hushed circumstances. Samantha felt a flood of apprehension. Could this all just be a last-minute fling? Or was it something more insidious? Something that would devastate Clarissa if revealed. Determined to unearth the truth, Samantha made a quiet vow. She'd find Georgina and get answers. Meanwhile, Georgina struggled with her own inner turmoil. She despised the idea of confronting Clarissa on the eve of her wedding, but Maxwell's refusal to openly address the situation filled her with guilt and frustration. She had spoken with her sister Annabelle, who advised her to handle things carefully, suggesting legal counsel or at least a structured negotiation. But Georgina was guided less by legalities and more by moral necessity. She wanted her child to grow up without secrets, to have a father who openly claimed him or her, rather than existing as a hush-hush arrangement. Late one night, she penned a letter addressed to Clarissa Townsend. It outlined the truth, everything from her relationship with Maxwell, the pregnancy, and her desire for a proper resolution. Georgina sealed it in a crisp envelope, but hesitated. Was she truly willing to detonate a bomb under Maxwell's fairy tale wedding? If there was another route, she would have taken it, but Maxwell's evasiveness left her feeling like an afterthought. As her due date inched closer, Georgina's resolve solidified. She mailed the letter, certain it would arrive in Clarissa's hands within days. Deep down, Georgina prayed that honesty might pave a better path forward, even if it meant heartbreak. The Harrington-Townsend wedding was scheduled to take place at the Highclere estate in upstate New York, rumored to cost over $1 million just for the event rental. Florists were flown in from Paris. The catering was by a Michelin-starred chef from Tuscany, and the guest list boasted over 500 VIPs. It was a spectacle that only the wealthiest circles could orchestrate, and all eyes were on this union. Beatrice Carmichael, the wedding planner, navigated every detail with meticulous care. The color palettes were selected, the floral arches erected, and the crystal chandeliers placed in the grand ballroom. She had coordinated with the Townsend family's staff for months, and everything was on schedule except for the intangible tension in the air. The bride's face looked wan with worry. The groom's eyes darted around anxiously, and the staff whispered about uninvited guests. As the wedding day approached, newspapers predicted the event of the season. The public only saw the grandeur. No one suspected the sizzling drama quietly brewing. But those intimately involved, especially Maxwell, Clarissa, Georgina, and Samantha, could feel the storm. Whether it would stay under wraps or explode publicly remained to be seen, and the clock was ticking toward the altar. On the night before the wedding, Sterling Townsend hosted an intimate rehearsal dinner at his Manhattan penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, while a string quartet played soft melodies. Clarissa, dressed in an elegant blue gown, made rounds greeting relatives and close friends. Maxwell attempted to maintain poise, but he was clearly on edge. During the dinner toasts, Andrew Carmichael tried to lighten the mood with a humorous story about Maxwell's college days. Everyone laughed except Maxwell, who stared at his phone expecting some last-minute crisis. Samantha Diaz watched him from the corner of her eye, certain he was hiding something. She had tried calling the mysterious Georgina Coleman, but the call went straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, Clarissa sipped her champagne and forced a radiant smile, her gut telling her something was off, though she couldn't pinpoint what. A hush fell over the room when Sterling stood to make his toast. "Tomorrow," he boomed, "my daughter marries the man who will join our families in both love and business. May this be a union we celebrate for decades to come." Applause erupted. Maxwell swallowed hard, knowing that this might be the last peaceful moment before the avalanche of truth. That night, Maxwell couldn't sleep. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the guest suite hammered in his head like a judge's gavel. At 2:00 a.m., he slipped out of bed and crept into the penthouse's study, a grand room filled with leather-bound books and a marble fireplace. There he called Georgina. To his surprise, she answered. "Don't do anything rash tomorrow," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "I'll figure this out, I promise." Georgina was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke her words, laced with resignation. "I sent a letter to Clarissa. She deserves the truth." Maxwell's stomach lurched. "What do you mean you sent a letter?" "Did she get it?" "I'm not sure. I sent it days ago, so it might have arrived by now." Georgina answered quietly. "If you want to do the right thing, you'll tell her yourself before she reads it from me." The call ended, leaving Maxwell gripping the phone in despair. Every moral fiber told him he should confess to Clarissa immediately. But with mere hours until the wedding, how could he sabotage everything? He retreated to his room, consumed by dread, uncertain whether Georgina's letter would detonate the final blow. The next morning, the Highclere estate was a hive of activity. Early rays of sun streamed through sprawling gardens, catching glints of dew on rose petals. Florists worked double time, assembling the arches while caterers prepared exotic dishes in the estate's industrial kitchen. Photographers and videographers buzzed around, capturing every detail of the grand setting. Clarissa woke up feeling unusually uneasy, her heart fluttering with doubt. She found a sealed envelope on the breakfast tray that had been delivered to her bridal suite. The estate staff said it had arrived that morning. Before she could open it, Samantha Diaz burst in, breathless. She had spent the early dawn searching for more information on Georgina. She had discovered that Georgina was indeed pregnant, and an old friend had confirmed Maxwell was likely the father. "I need to talk to you," Samantha said, her voice urgent. Clarissa, her nerves already on edge, signaled for Samantha to continue. But before a single word was spoken, the hairstylist and makeup artist arrived to prepare the bride. With a house full of staff, Samantha didn't dare speak too openly. Clarissa's hands shook as she placed the unopened envelope on the vanity, its contents beckoning like a ticking time bomb. Georgina stood outside the Highclere estate's wrought iron gates. Her shoulders squared, a mixture of trepidation and resolve coursing through her. She wore a loose-fitting floral dress that tried its best to hide her baby bump, though it was quite obvious by now. She could have stayed away, But something compelled her to bear witness to the outcome of her letter, or to confront Maxwell if he hadn't come clean yet. Security halted her at the entrance. She explained she needed to see the groom, that she was on the list. The guards, uncertain, checked their roster and found no Georgina Coleman. Determined not to be turned away, Georgina held up a text from Maxwell which showed earlier conversations about meeting up. Reluctantly, one guard used his walkie-talkie to radio for confirmation. Moments later, Andrew Carmichael appeared in a crisp suit, recognized Georgina, and with a tense nod told security she was with him. Georgina's heart pounded as she walked through the estate's immaculate gardens. She looked up at the towering building and the lavish decor, mindful that inside a bride was getting ready to walk down the aisle, while unaware of the secret that might shatter her life. With the wedding ceremony only hours away, Samantha Diaz sensed time was running out. She found a quiet corner near Clarissa's suite to examine the letter Clarissa had left unopened on the vanity. Clarissa had been whisked away for final dress alterations, leaving Samantha alone with the mysterious envelope. The handwriting was elegant, yet shaky, addressed to Clarissa Townsend. Her journalistic instincts took over. She tore open the envelope carefully and quickly scanned the letter. It was from Georgina, detailing her relationship with Maxwell, the pregnancy, and her desire for an honest resolution. Samantha's eyes widened. The pages read like a confession of love, betrayal, and heartbreak, evidence that Maxwell had hidden an entire life from Clarissa. A surge of protective fury and dread coursed through Samantha. She knew she had to tell Clarissa immediately. The bride deserved to know the truth before saying her vows. But as Samantha stepped into the hallway to find Clarissa, she collided with Maxwell himself. He spotted the letter in her hand and froze, his face etched with panic. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, voice hoarse. Samantha tightened her grip, realizing that in her hands she held the power to unravel this entire wedding. Maxwell's eyes darted from Samantha's face to the letter in her trembling hand. He knew exactly what it contained, every damning truth he had failed to confess to Clarissa. The color drained from his face. "Please, Samantha," he said, voice urgent but subdued. "This isn't how it looks. I wanted to tell Clarissa, I really did. But so much was on the line." Samantha stared at him with a mix of pity and anger. She had always viewed Maxwell with skepticism, but never imagined something this grave. "You've betrayed her," she hissed. "She needs to know now before she walks down that aisle." A flash of helplessness passed through Maxwell's eyes. "I'm going to tell her," he promised. "Let me do it in my own way." Her instincts told her not to trust him, but looking into Maxwell's anguished face, Samantha made a choice. She handed him the letter. "You tell her, or I will," she warned. Maxwell nodded, gripping the letter like it was a lifeline in a storm. He turned to leave, shoulders bowed under the weight of impending doom. Samantha watched him vanish down the corridor, feeling a hollow ache. She prayed Clarissa's heart would survive the truth. Maxwell rushed to the bridal suite, where Clarissa was mid-fitting. The seamstresses fussed over the layers of imported lace and pearls, pinning fabric here and there, trying to ensure the gown fit to perfection. Clarissa's gaze lifted when Maxwell entered. Immediately, she noticed his ashen complexion and the letter clutched in his hand. "Everyone out," Maxwell said firmly, though his voice cracked with tension. The seamstresses hesitated, but Clarissa nodded, and they filed out, leaving the couple alone in the sunlit room. Clarissa folded her arms, heart pounding, as she met Maxwell's eyes in the mirrored reflection. "What's this about?" she asked, noticing the letter. Maxwell approached her slowly. For a moment he couldn't speak, his throat constricted by guilt. He extended the letter. "Read this?" he whispered. She took the paper and scanned it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to profound hurt. Tears welled in her eyes as she read the final lines about Georgina's pregnancy. Her hands began to shake, and she nearly dropped the letter. How could you?" she choked out. Clarissa's pristine wedding gown, so full of hope, now felt suffocating. Maxwell stepped closer, desperate to console her, but she recoiled, unleashing a sob that echoed throughout the suite. Clarissa crumpled onto a chaise lounge, tears streaming down her meticulously made-up face. She stared at Maxwell as though he were a stranger. Outside, she could hear the hustle of wedding staff, the distant chatter of arriving guests, oblivious to the turmoil within these walls. Why, she gasped, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" Maxwell dropped to his knees beside her. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what your father would do. And I thought Georgina. I thought we had ended. But then she came back pregnant, and I just didn't know how to handle it." Clarissa let out a bitter laugh that turned into a sob. "You should have told me the moment you found out I'm not some fragile doll. I could have handled the truth. But this deception—" She shook her head, feeling as if the ground beneath her had collapsed. Every dream Clarissa had spun walking down the aisle in her custom gown, forging a power couple with Maxwell, merging fortunes to create a legacy, had crumbled. Now she faced the humiliating possibility of calling off the wedding in front of hundreds of guests and the entire world's media. Moments after Clarissa's breakdown, Sterling Townsend barreled into the bridal suite. His imposing figure took in the scene, his daughter in tears, Maxwell on his knees, and the letter on the floor. He snatched it up, glancing over the incriminating paragraphs with a darkening scowl. "You lying son of a—" He couldn't even finish. His rage was palpable. He tossed the letter onto a nearby table, his fists clenched. "You dare bring shame to my family? On my daughter's wedding day?" Maxwell tried to speak, but Sterling's glare cut him off. The older man turned to Clarissa, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "My dear, we can stop this. No one will judge you if we call it off. Our lawyers will see to the details." Fresh tears flooded Clarissa's eyes. She looked at Maxwell, heart tearing in two. The betrayal was immense, but so was their love, if what they had was even love at all. Confusion and heartbreak churned inside her. Sterling turned back to Maxwell. "Pack up your things. Get off my estate," he spat. "Consider your business alliance with Townsend Realty permanently severed." Maxwell's face drained of color. His entire world was falling apart, and the moment of reckoning had arrived. Amidst the chaos, time surged forward. Guests began to fill the ornate garden seats, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside. A hush of anticipation settled among the crowd, including global CEOs, society influencers, and even a few celebrities who had flown in just for the spectacle. Beatrice Carmichael, frantically checking the timeline, noticed the bride was not descending to the aisle. She sent her assistants racing back and forth to find out what was causing the delay. The string quartet repeated the prelude for the third time, an uneasy tension starting to ripple through the assembled guests. Meanwhile, Andrew Carmichael was outside, pacing near the estate's entrance. He had let Georgina in earlier, and she was now somewhere in the mansion, possibly looking for Maxwell. Andrew's own nerves were frayed. He understood Maxwell had made a colossal mistake, but he also feared for Georgina's emotional well-being. Finally, Sterling Townsend appeared at the top of the garden steps. He raised his hand to pause the music, commanding everyone's attention. Clearing his throat, he prepared to address the puzzled crowd, torn between saving his daughter's dignity and publicly humiliating Maxwell. The wedding that everyone had awaited with delight was about to face its most dramatic moment. Inside the grand foyer, Clarissa had locked herself in a small alcove, away from prying eyes. The tears had dried, replaced by a hollowness she couldn't name. Maxwell stood outside the door, asking her to let him explain. "Please, Clarissa, let me talk to you," he begged, leaning against the doorframe. At last, she opened the door a crack. Meeting his eyes, the gown rustled around her feet like a fallen cloud. "Why should I trust anything you say now?" she asked, her voice shaking. Maxwell swallowed hard. "Because I love you. Yes, I made a terrible mistake, one I didn't know how to fix. But the one truth in all of this is that I do love you." She gazed at him, her mind racing. Could she salvage this? Could their future weather such a betrayal? She thought of Georgina, the unborn child, and the scandal waiting outside. Glancing at the reflection of herself in a gilded mirror, Clarissa remembered who she was, a woman of dignity, not a pawn in a business deal. Finally, she stepped back. "Bring her here. I need to see Georgina face to face. If this wedding is going to happen at all, it has to happen with complete honesty." Maxwell moved swiftly, searching the estate's corridors, until he found Georgina. She was standing near a gilded portrait of the estate's original owners, looking lost and out of place among the finery. The moment she saw Maxwell, her expression hardened, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. "Clarissa wants to speak with you," Maxwell said gently, though his nerves were on edge. Georgina hesitated. Part of her wanted to run. The weight of confronting the bride face to face felt overwhelming, yet a deeper part of her, the part that longed for honesty and clarity, nodded. She followed Maxwell down a corridor until they reached the small alcove where Clarissa waited. When Georgina entered, Clarissa's gaze swept over her swollen belly and trembling hands. For a moment, no words were exchanged. The tension was thick heartbreak, a tangible presence in the air. Finally, Clarissa mustered the courage to speak. I read your letter," she said, voice quivering. "I needed to see you to know this was real." "It's real," Georgina whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I never wanted to destroy your happiness. I'm carrying his child, and I deserve acknowledgement." Clarissa's lip trembled. In that moment, she saw Georgina not as a villain, but as a woman trapped by circumstance, just like her. Clarissa invited Georgina to sit on a plush ottoman near a tall window that overlooked the estate's sprawling gardens. The bride-to-be stood beside the window wedding gown, shimmering in the soft light, a stark contrast to Georgina's simple floral dress. Maxwell remained a few feet away, uncertainty etched into his face. "What do you want from us?" Clarissa asked quietly, forcing herself to remain composed. Georgina looked down at her hands. "I want Maxwell to be a father to our child. Beyond that, I'm not here to extort money or force him into anything, but I refuse to let my baby be a secret." Clarissa closed her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. "You have every right. And Maxwell, he shouldn't have lied. To either of us." She cast a piercing glance at him, her pain palpable. "You're supposed to be my husband in 20 minutes, yet I know nothing about the biggest part of your past. How can I marry you like this?" Maxwell stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. I will do whatever it takes to make this right. I'm ready to stand by Georgina as the father of our child. But I also love you, Clarissa. I can't lose you. It was a crossroads moment that would determine all their futures. Just as the three wrestled with their emotions, a burst of voices emanated from the hallway. Sterling Townsend stormed in with Andrew Carmichael at his side. The older man's face was flushed with anger, tempered only by the presence of Clarissa and Georgina in the same room. He halted abruptly, taking in the sight of both women and a visibly distraught Maxwell. Clarissa Sterling said, his tone fatherly, yet firm. Our guests are waiting. The entire business community is buzzing about this wedding. I can only stall them for so long. Either we proceed or we end it. Now. Clarissa looked at her father, lips parted, as she tried to form words. Her eyes flickered to Maxwell, then to Georgina, searching for some clarity, some sign. But all she felt was an overwhelming swirl of heartbreak and confusion. Sterling's voice softened just a fraction. Sweetheart, if you want to call it off, I'll support that decision. But don't leave hundreds of guests waiting in ignorance. Make a choice. Andrew stepped forward, glancing at Maxwell with a mix of sympathy and reproach. Maxwell, you need to come clean to everyone or walk away. You can't hide this anymore. Amid the swirl of conflict, Clarissa inhaled deeply, steeling herself for a decision that could change their lives forever. Outside, the elegant string quartet had stopped playing. Guests whispered in confusion, glancing at the vacant altar draped in white roses. The officiant checked his watch for what felt like the 10th time. Beatrice Carmichael wrung her hands anxiously, receiving conflicting updates from staff. Suddenly, Clarissa Townsend appeared at the top of the aisle. But she wasn't alone. She was flanked by Maxwell on one side and Georgina on the other. Their unexpected entrance jolted the crowd into silence. Sterling stood off to the side, grim-faced, while Samantha Diaz watched with bated breath, holding back tears of her own. Clarissa cleared her throat, her voice carrying across the garden. I apologize for the delay, everyone. We have a development that needs to be addressed before any vows are exchanged. An uneasy murmur spread through the guests. Photographers snapped furiously, eager to capture whatever was unfolding. Maxwell stood, eyes fixed on the ground, wishing he could vanish. Georgina's face was pale but determined. The swirling tension could be felt by every soul present, as though they collectively held their breath, waiting for the bride's next words. Before Clarissa continued, her voice trembled, and she looked at Georgina with an odd mixture of empathy and sorrow. This is Georgina Coleman, she announced, and she's carrying Maxwell's child. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests stood craning their necks for a better view. Others exchanged stunned glances, already anticipating how the tabloids would devour this story. Billionaire drama at Highclere Estate. Could there be a bigger scandal? Maxwell stepped forward, his face ashen. I owe everyone here an apology, especially Clarissa and her family. Georgina and I have a history that I never properly disclosed. She's pregnant with my child, and I've kept it a secret out of fear. I'm sorry. His words hung in the air. Clarissa lifted her chin, tears brimming in her eyes. I love Maxwell, she admitted, voice cracking. But I also believe that if we are to move forward in any capacity, it has to be grounded in truth. For too long, I've lived under expectations, my father's societies, even my own illusions. Today, I'm breaking that pattern." She paused, glancing at Georgina, who seemed stunned by Clarissa's courage. Then Clarissa turned to the officiant. "We will not continue with the wedding as planned. Instead, I need to figure out what love and honesty mean in this new reality." A hush fell again, the crowd unsure whether to applaud her bravery or reel from the shock of it all. In the moments following Clarissa's announcement, chaos ensued. Some guests quietly gathered their belongings, whispering words of comfort to one another. Others lingered, hoping for more revelations, or even a last-minute reconciliation. The press, who had been stationed outside the estate to cover the so-called wedding of the year, rushed forward with cameras and microphones. Sterling Townsend, though disappointed and livid, respected his daughter's decision. He motioned for security to manage the crowd. Andrew Carmichael gently guided Georgina away from the throng, shielding her from intrusive photographers. Maxwell reached for Clarissa's hand, but she pulled away, her eyes brimming with tears. "I need time, Max. Time to understand what we are, if we are anything anymore. And Georgina needs space to figure out what she wants from you as the father of her child." He nodded, feeling a hollow ache in his chest. The fairy tale had unraveled in front of a live audience, but for the first time, everything was out in the open. There were no more secrets to guard. All that remained was the hard, uncertain path of making amends, if amends were even possible. Clarissa turned her back on the throng of guests, and with her father at her side, made her way back into the estate, tears trailing down her cheeks. Within hours, news outlets and social media platforms exploded with coverage. "Billionaire Groom's secret baby bombshell." The headline screamed. The Townsend family's PR team scrambled to issue statements that were both compassionate and firm, emphasizing Clarissa's right to privacy and the family's unwavering support for her decision. Meanwhile, Maxwell's phone buzzed incessantly, with calls and messages from board members, curious acquaintances, and even opportunistic journalists seeking an exclusive interview. Harrington Financial's stock dipped slightly as investors worried about the scandal's potential impact on Maxwell's leadership. Sterling Townsend cancelled the official business merger until further notice, putting a multi-million-dollar deal in limbo. Maxwell spent the next few days holed up in his penthouse, ignoring almost everyone except for Andrew Carmichael and occasionally Georgina, who bravely tried to maintain some semblance of routine amid the chaos. Clarissa, sequestered at her father's downtown residence, refused to respond to Maxwell's messages. Samantha Diaz, ever the loyal friend, stood guard, screening all calls and offering Clarissa tissues and comfort in her heartbreak. The world outside buzzed with gossip, but inside Clarissa's sanctuary, a quiet heartbreak reigned, overshadowed by a question none could answer. Where do they all go from here? 10 days passed before Clarissa finally agreed to meet Maxwell. 10 long, aching days filled with silence, headlines, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions. In that time, the world had moved on to fresher scandals, but her world had not. Hers was still frozen in that moment at Highclere Estate, the moment when everything she believed about love, loyalty, and her future had shattered. She chose a small, quiet cafe on the Upper West Side for their meeting, a place so unassuming that not even the most persistent paparazzi would bother lurking there. It was the kind of spot she used to love, before life became all press releases and posed photos. She wore no makeup, a simple wool coat, and her hair tied back, the opposite of the glamorous heiress the public knew. Today she wasn't a socialite, just a woman nursing a broken heart. Maxwell arrived a few minutes late. He looked older, like the weight of his choices had aged him. The sharp lines of his bespoke suit, couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes or the slump in his shoulders. As he approached the table, Clarissa didn't stand. She merely looked up and said, "Sit." He did. The silence stretched. Maxwell tried to speak twice before words finally came. "I know I've said I'm sorry 100 times, but it's still not enough. And maybe it never will be." Clarissa nodded slowly. "No, it's not enough. Not yet." She stirred her tea without sipping. Maxwell watched her, unsure if he was waiting for forgiveness or a final sentence. He had rehearsed what he'd say, but none of it seemed to matter now. Not with her sitting across from him, so heartbreakingly real. "I loved you," Clarissa said, her voice quiet but unflinching. "Maybe I still do. But you lied to me. You lied in the worst way, by omission. You made me dream of a life while hiding a truth that changed everything." Maxwell lowered his eyes. "I was terrified, not just of what would happen between us, but of failing everyone, your father, the business, our families. I made a coward's choice." Clarissa looked out the window, blinking back a tear. "You weren't just a man I was going to marry, Max. You were the person I chose. I defended you. I loved you when you were too tired to love yourself, and you repaid me with secrets. I know," he said, voice rough, "but I don't want to lose you. I'm trying to become someone worthy of the chance to make this right." She finally looked at him again, her eyes searching his face not for answers but for sincerity. "You said you want to be in Georgina's life, in the baby's life. I respect that. I would never stand in the way of that. But if we move forward, it has to be with no more lies, no blurred lines, no late-night disappearances. I won't live in shadows." Maxwell leaned forward, urgency in his tone. "You won't have to. I'm ready to own all of it. The truth, the responsibility, the consequences. But only if there's still a chance with you." Clarissa took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "There might be. But I'm not promising anything. I need time, and I need to see if you can be the man you're claiming to be. Not just for me, but for that child." Maxwell nodded, a glimmer of hope returning to his eyes. "Whatever it takes." They sat in silence again, not as strangers, but not quite as lovers either. Somewhere in between. Somewhere on the long, uncertain road between betrayal and healing. Clarissa stood first. "Goodbye, Max." "Goodbye." "For now," he asked, hopeful. She paused. "We'll see." Then she left her coat fluttering behind her, leaving Maxwell alone with 2 cups of cold tea and the heavy realization that rebuilding trust was the only bridge worth crossing, now one careful step at a time. A week after their tentative truce at the cafe, Clarissa agreed to accompany Maxwell to Georgina's apartment in Chelsea. It was a mild Saturday afternoon, the kind of spring day where the world outside felt deceptively peaceful. But inside, Clarissa's nerves buzzed like static. She wasn't sure what she was walking into: a confrontation, a negotiation, or something far messier. What she did know was this: if there was going to be any future with Maxwell, she needed to face Georgina woman to woman, with no illusions. Georgina's apartment was small but warm. Soft pastel walls were decorated with photos from her travels: Barcelona, Kyoto, London. It didn't scream wealth or power, but it radiated intention and quiet strength. A partially finished nursery peeked out from the second bedroom, a white crib, a mobile of stars and clouds, a stack of folded baby clothes, already washed and neatly arranged. They sat at a modest dining table, a teapot between them, 3 mismatched mugs in their hands. Maxwell looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to lead or sit back. It was clear this moment wasn't his to control. Georgina broke the silence. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I almost didn't," Clarissa replied honestly. "But I think we all need clarity." Georgina nodded and glanced at Maxwell. "I've been trying to plan for the baby's arrival. I'm due in a few months, and there are things I need to know." "Mainly Maxwell. What kind of father are you going to be? I need more than promises." Maxwell sat up straighter, his expression serious. "I'll be there. Not just financially. I want to be part of her life fully." Clarissa stiffened slightly at the word, her absorbing the reality that this child wasn't some abstract complication. She was a little girl, a daughter, a life already beginning. Georgina turned to Clarissa. "I don't want to cause more pain. I didn't come back to ruin your relationship. I came back because I couldn't raise this child in secrecy. I want to co-parent with dignity, that's all." Clarissa took a breath before replying. "I understand, and you're right to expect that. But I need to protect myself too. I don't want a future built on silences or side agreements. If Maxwell and I are going to move forward this child, and you can't be a hidden part of his life, we either live in truth or we don't live together at all." Georgina's eyes softened. "That's fair." Maxwell, quiet until now, spoke with urgency. "I know I've made every mistake in the book, but I'm trying to learn from them. I want to be a father to this child, and I want to be a better man for both of you." "Clarissa, I still love you. I always have. But I know that love means nothing if it's not rooted in truth." Clarissa's eyes shimmered, but she held firm. "Then prove it. Be present. Be consistent. And don't make me question your loyalty again, not to me and not to her." The air between them crackled with emotion. There was no resolution, not yet. But there was something else, an understanding that while their lives were tangled in the wreckage of past choices, none of them wanted to live there anymore. As they left Georgina's apartment, Clarissa and Maxwell walked side by side, not holding hands but not apart either. There was no promise of reconciliation, no decision etched in stone. Only a shared awareness that the road ahead would be uncertain, and whatever came next would have to be earned. Whether this was a new beginning or the end of the story remained to be seen. Spring passed into early summer with surprising quiet. After months of emotional upheaval, public scandal, and private reckonings, life for the 3 entangled hearts, Maxwell, Clarissa, and Georgina, settled into a rhythm that was far from normal, but cautiously stable. When Georgina gave birth in early June, the city was blanketed in warmth. Her labor was long but safe, and just before sunrise, she brought a healthy baby girl into the world. She named her Ava Coleman Harrington, giving the child both her lineage and her independence. Her cry was strong and immediate, a declaration of life louder than any press release or wedding vow could ever be. Maxwell was there. He held Georgina's hand through the pain, and when Ava arrived, he broke down. His tears weren't for the scandal or the regret, but for the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. He was a father, not just by biology, but by choice. When the nurse handed him Ava, he trembled. She was tiny, wrinkled, beautiful, and she was his. Clarissa visited the next day. She brought yellow roses, a quiet smile, and a heart still unsure of its direction. Seeing Georgina in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, and Ava asleep against her chest, stirred something complicated in Clarissa's heart. Not resentment, not jealousy, but a strange, aching tenderness. "She's beautiful," Clarissa whispered, gently touching the baby's foot. Georgina gave a tired smile and nodded. For a long moment, the two women sat in silence, connected not by friendship, not by forgiveness, but by the undeniable bond of shared history and shared future. Maxwell stood nearby, watching the surreal scene unfold, the woman he had nearly married and the woman who bore his child coexisting peacefully in the same room. He knew it was fragile, temporary even, but it was something. The media, ever hungry, had shifted its attention to newer scandals, though the headlines about the wedding that wasn't still lingered in gossip columns. Harrington Financial's stock had recovered slightly after Maxwell issued a formal statement taking full responsibility and outlining his plans to remain an active father. Sterling Townsend had resumed cautious talks about a business partnership, not because of family ties, but because, under Clarissa's urging, he saw value in a man who owned his mistakes. Clarissa, meanwhile, was redefining her future. She declined invitations to charity, galas, stepped away from the socialite circuit, and spent her days at an art residency, upstate painting in a converted barn, and rediscovering her voice. The quiet gave her clarity. She wasn't running away from the past, she was making room for a new version of herself, one that didn't exist for headlines or her father's approval. As for her relationship with Maxwell, it unfolded cautiously. They spoke often long walks through Central Park dinners at her apartment, messages exchanged between board meetings and doctor's appointments. There were no proclamations of love, no rescheduled wedding. Only the soft rhythm of rebuilding trust brick by brick. One warm evening, Maxwell joined Clarissa at the art studio. He watched her paint in silence, mesmerized by the fluid grace in her movements. "Do you think we'll ever find our way back?" he asked gently. Clarissa paused, her brush hovering over the canvas. She turned to him and said, "Maybe. But if we do, it'll be something new. Not a return, a beginning." He nodded, knowing she was right. The ring Maxwell had dropped at the altar all those weeks ago remained in its velvet box tucked away in a drawer. He hadn't touched it since. Perhaps one day he would. Or perhaps he never would. Because love, he had learned, isn't forged in grand gestures or million-dollar venues. It's stitched together in vulnerability, truth, and the willingness to stay, even when things fall apart. As Ava cooed in her crib and summer light spilled into the windows of 3 separate homes forever bound by one event, the future remained uncertain but open. And sometimes that was enough. Love and betrayal, wealth and heartbreak. This story reminds us that even the most picture-perfect moments can collapse beneath the weight of hidden truths. Maxwell, Clarissa, and Georgina stood at the center of a social and emotional tornado, forced to confront who they truly were and what they valued most. Though the wedding day ended in chaos, the unraveling also paved the way for genuine honesty and unexpected kinship. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey full of drama twists, and ultimately, the courage it takes to face the truth. If you were captivated by this tale, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing with friends, and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement helps us bring you more riveting stories that explore the complexities of love life and second chances. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your stories bold.